Most people think manual mode is the proper way to shoot, and yes, manual has its place. But when I'm traveling, walking through villages, exploring old streets, photographing people, light, details, landscapes, and moments that disappear quickly, I use Aperture Priority about 90% of the time. Not because I'm lazy, because for travel photography, it often gets me better results faster. So in this video, I'm going to show you why Aperture Priority is one of the best camera modes for travel photography, how I use it, when I avoid it, and why it's one of the best modes to stop overthinking about camera settings. Travel photography is not like setting up controlled portrait shoot. You are constantly moving, the light changes, people walk into the frame, a shadow appears, a car passes. The scene looks perfect for about 5 seconds and then it's gone. That is the problem with trying to shoot everything in manual mode when traveling. And when you are too busy thinking about ISO, shutter speed and aperture, exposure and metering, you can miss the actual photo. Because when I'm traveling, I don't want my attention on camera settings. I want to focus on good composition, finding good lighting, and capturing moments before they disappear. The camera setting should support the photo, not become the photo. So instead of controlling everything, I let the camera handle some of the boring stuff while I focus on the image. Aperture Priority is simple. You choose the aperture, the camera chooses the shutter speed, and depending on your settings, the camera can also handle ISO. So instead of controlling every single setting, I decide on the look I want. Do I want a blurry background? I open the aperture. Do I want the scene sharp? I close the aperture. Then the camera works out the exposure for me. That is why I like it for travel photography. It gives me creative control without slowing me down. For travel photos, the aperture controls one of the most important creative choices: how much of the scene is in focus. If I'm photographing a detail like a coffee cup, door handle, flowers, food, or someone walking through a street, I might use a wider aperture like f2.8. That helps separate the subject from the background. But if I'm photographing a village, a landscape, architecture, or a street scene where I want more depth, I usually stop down to something like f5.6, f8, or f11. This is the part I care about most. Not whether my shutter speed is exactly 1/500 or 1/640. I care about the look of the photo, and Aperture Priority lets me decide that quickly. But this is where people get Aperture Priority wrong. The biggest mistake is thinking that Aperture Priority means the camera does everything perfectly. It does not. You still need to watch your shutter speed. Because if the camera drops the shutter too low, your photo can come out blurry. This matters especially when photographing people, movement, street scenes, or shooting handheld in lower light. So my rule is simple. When I use Aperture Priority, I always keep an eye on the shutter speed. If it gets too slowed, I'll either raise the ISO, open the aperture, or use auto ISO with a minimum shutter speed if my camera allows it. That is what stops Aperture Priority from ruining your photos. It's not fully automatic, it's controlled automatic. Here's my basic travel setup. I set the camera to Aperture Priority, I choose the aperture depending on the scene, and I use auto ISO most of the time. I set my minimum shutter speed to fast or manually set depending on the lens I'm using. I use exposure compensation when the photo looks too bright or too dark, and I keep an eye on my highlights, especially in harsh Cyprus sun. And that's it. This setup lets me react quickly without having to rebuild my settings every time the light changes. I'll even save this as a preset on my camera, so that way I can always switch to it when flicking between photo and video. If I walk from bright sunlight into shade, the camera adjusts. If I turn a corner and see a moment happening, I can shoot immediately. And if the background is too distracting, I can open the aperture. If the scene needs more depth, I stop down. Simple. Let's say I'm walking through a village in Cyprus, and if I see a nice cat sitting on a rooftop, I might just use a wider aperture to isolate the detail. And if I'm photographing a narrow street with layers, textures, and leading lines, I'll stop down so more of the scene stays sharp. And if I'm at the coast during golden hour, I might use f5.6 or f8 to keep the environment sharp, but still move quickly as the light changes. And if I'm photographing someone during a tour, I don't want to waste time fiddling with every setting. I want to stay present, guide them, and catch the moment. This is where Aperture Priority is perfect because it keeps the experience moving. Now, why not use auto mode? Because auto mode makes too many creative decisions for you. It might choose an aperture that makes the background too sharp, it might raise the ISO more than you want, and it might use a shutter speed that technically works but doesn't give you the look you wanted. Aperture priority is better than auto because you still control the creative part. You can choose the depth of field, you can choose the fill, the camera just helps with the exposure. That is why I think aperture priority is the next best step for anyone wanting to take better travel photos without jumping straight into full manual mode. To be clear, manual mode is not bad because I still use it. If I'm shooting long exposure, astrophotography, or a scene where the light is not changing, manual mode makes sense. It gives you consistency. But for walking around, exploring, and reacting to travel moments, manual mode is not always the best tool. Sometimes it just adds friction, and travel photography already has enough going on. Let me know in the comments, what is your ideal place to visit to capture stunning photos? And do you usually use manual mode, auto mode, or aperture priority when you travel? Because the goal is not to look professional by using the hardest settings. It is to make better decisions faster. Where is the light? What is the composition? And what moment is happening in front of me? Aperture priority gives me enough control while freeing up more of my attention for the actual photograph. Because the point is to come home with better photos. Photos that feel intentional, photos that capture the place, photos that do not fall apart because you were too slow or too distracted by the camera. Aperture priority removes some of the technical pressure, but still keeps you in control of the creative decision. And that is why I use it 90% of the time for travel photography. Not because it's beginner mode, because it's practical. If this video helps understand your camera a little better, then hit that like button, because it helps the video reach more people who want to improve their travel photography. And subscribe if you want more simple, practical travel photography videos filmed here in Cyprus. And if you ever visit Cyprus and you want to explore the island through travel photography, check the links in the description box down below. I've also included a free photo spots guide for inspiration. Now, if you want to see why smartphones suck for travel photography, check this video out here, otherwise YouTube recommends this one. I'll see you in Cyprus soon.